Senator Collins must go. There was a cloture vote yesterday. She basically betrayed all young women in the future. We really need people on the Supreme Court who respect both men and women. Hopefully you're angry about what happened with Kavanaugh. Hopefully you're tired of women who enable men to treat women like second-class citizens. Being angry, being sad, and protesting can be normal emotions that we all go through. It really doesn't do anything for the bottom line. It doesn't do anything to improve who represents us and our point of view as women. So what we really need to remember is that we have to vote. We must all vote. Okay, we're just gonna do it. Just vote. This is what we need to do. We need to get off the couch. We need to get going. And we need to roll up our sleeves. And we need to get hurt. One thing we need to do is increase the Democrat registered voter rolls. We have 10 days to do it. October 16th is the deadline for mailing in new voter registrations. We need to get everybody to turn out. Everybody we know. We got to load up the car, get everybody in the car, go vote. Even if you know someone that is not registered, take them with you, because in Maine you can register on the day of the election as well. Of course, they need to be U.S. citizen and they need to be 18 by November 6th, 2018. The other thing we can do to help the situation is to encourage Democrats to vote for a Democrat in the state of Maine. Here is the list of senators. There's something called classes. The senators that are coming up for vote in 2018 are in the first column here, class 1. The following class will be elected in 2020, and class 3 will be elected in 2022. The deepest Democratic state, if you will, is the state of Hawaii. The senator from Hawaii is the most outspoken. Susan Collins must go. She voted partisan on a nonpartisan issue, and we can start change now, today. We can do things now. So let's do them. As we go down the list here, and you can see there's a lot of Democratic senators that are very pro-women. But once you get down to Maine, you see that even though it's a D+3 in terms of Democratic rating, Susan Collins is out here as the outlier, as a Republican coming up in 2020 for election. Of course, we have a few others we need to take care of on this list as we go through, but this video is really focused on Susan. The senators who are on the spectrum between Susan Collins and Jeff Flake, we should try to take care of those. And as you can see here, we have Chuck Grassley and Tom Tillis. So how has Susan been doing? Her first election in 1996, she won by 32,000 votes. The second election in 2002, she won by 93,000. Third election in 2008, she won by 165, and in 2014, she won by 221. She is an incumbent, so that would be expected. The number of votes that she received in 2008 was 444,000, as opposed to 411,000 in 2014. There may be a trend happening here, and we may want to try to capitalize on that. It is going to take some hard work to reverse that trend. Now, if you look at the people she ran against during all those elections, I think the best one that would have been great had she won would be the one in 2014. It's going to take some work again. Now, this was an interesting article, and it said voter registration hits all-time high. They're almost increased by 19,000 over last year. Now let's compare these numbers from the last election Susan had. So she had 411,000 votes. In 2014, Republicans registered were only 267. So she obviously pulled a lot of people from the unenrolled, unspecified, or the Democratic side. Now, if you look at the total number of Democratic registered voters, it was 312,000 as opposed to the 189,000. We could use a little more support from the Democratic registered voters. Now, I put these numbers in Excel, and I actually did the calculations. Yes, all-time high, 324,000 Democratic registrations in 2016. And you can see an all-time low at 309 in 2015. Similarly, for the Republicans, you see an all-time high in 2012 for them, all-time low in 2015, and a little bit of a recovery. For the unenrolled or unspecified, you have an all-time low at 358,000. The Green Party peaked around 2014, and total, you can see the zigzag pattern. On the odd years, there's voter, so you see the reduction, and then on the even years, you see the drives that are increasing the voter rolls. Now, if you look at the actual sum of the numbers for 2000, you can see that they actually match up here. But if you look at the other years, they don't quite match up. If these numbers are all correct, it's only 991,000. So the increase year over year, if you will, from 2015, where they had the aggressive voter purge, to 2016 is actually a bump of 13,000 votes. But it looks like there is momentum building on the Democratic side, where we have a 5% increase year from 2015 to 2016, as opposed to the 1.5 increase on the Republican side. Now, if you note, we have a 1.5 increase here and a minus 1.6 increase here. It could be unaffiliated people jumped over to the Republican side. If you go from 2012 to 2014, there's an increase in 5,000. And then if you go from 14 to 16, you see an increase of about 2,000. So it's not a lot. Now, here's another piece of data from the last primary in Maine in July 2018. So if we want to compare the numbers total, you can see there's been an increase of 42,000 voters total registered between 2016 and 2018. So that's really some movement. If you look at the Democrats versus the Republicans, you see 342,000 versus the 324, which is an increase of 18,000 or 5.6%. Similarly, on the Republican side, 282 versus the 267, we're up 15,000 or 5.5%. We're basically in a dead heat for the last 2 years, both increasing by significant amounts. So we really need to continue this effort. The other thing about this chart is the delta in the registered Democrats versus Republican. So here in Cumberland County, we have 96,000 versus 54,000, a delta of 42,000. If you sum up the third parties, like the Green and the Libertarian, you have 11,000. Here you can get an idea whether the third parties sway an election or not. Are they too small, or can they really make a difference? In Cumberland County, the total third parties are a fairly small proportion of the delta between the two, maybe 1/3. You may be able to conclude the same in New York, but if you look at the next county, Penobscot, they're fairly equal, or let's say 2,000 delta in terms of how many Republicans versus Democrats, but there's twice as many in the third party. A county like that, a third party can really make a difference. If you look at the total of people in the third party, the Green and Libertarian, you got 42,000, another 5,000. You might say 50,000 people are sitting on the sidelines on primaries here because they can't vote in a Democrat or Republican primary. For these counties where it can make a difference, I would suggest that in the future, it may be at your disadvantage not to register as the other two parties that actually have a primary. The last 2014 election, we have the votes by county for Susan Collins and the votes by county for Shenna. And we can get an idea on turnout. If we had 96,000 registered Democrats, I suspect a lot of them, 53,000 of them, let's say, voted for Shenna. And if we look at Susan, she got 86,000. Obviously, she got more than all the Republicans, which was she obviously had to get some votes from the unspecified, maybe some Democratic votes, maybe some Green votes, and maybe some Libertarian votes. But obviously, she's pulling pretty well from all parties. Now, there were a total of 139,000 votes in that election versus a potential of 238. Now, these numbers are not apples to apples exactly because we're dealing with 2018 here versus 2014 here. But you can get an idea that about half, or let's say 58% of the folks that could have voted. And you can do the same analogy for all the counties. And you can get an idea of the counties that may be on the higher end of voter turnout and the counties that may be on the lower end of voter turnout. So 55% is one of the lowest ones. 60% is one of the highest ones. And actually, in this instance, the number of votes that Shenna received at 17,000 is actually higher in a state with less population. If we could get these top 3 counties to be around 64% turnout, that would be great. If we can get them up to 70, that would be even better. In 2014, Shenna got 189,000 votes. And if you look at how many votes District 1, U.S. House District 1 received, it's about all of them. So all your votes are, the majority of your Democratic votes are coming from this area. So this is the area to focus on. Maine is a state that has a closed primary. This means that in the primaries, you can only vote for the party you put down on your voter registration card. If you put down Green Party or Libertarian Party, you are at a handicap over the average voter who didn't put those parties down, because everybody else can go vote in the primary. Even if you have Democrat selected on your voter registration card, it doesn't prevent you from voting for anybody, for a Republican or a Green Party person. Affiliating with the third parties really dilutes your voting power, since you'll be faced with picking somebody else's pick at the end. So if Maine had open primaries, this would be a totally different story. This would not be such a handicap. When and if Maine primaries become open, feel free to re-affiliate with the Green or Libertarian parties. But I would also advise that at this time, just before the election, do not change your party affiliation.